governance to order.
All right, let me get that.
Joining us at the table tonight. The Ranger for the moment and our solicitor, Phil Holland. To use that British word I like to use. Which can also mean real estate agent, I'm told, in other parts of the British Empire. That's not Canadian. We taking a look at the minutes. They are pleasantly brief.
Let's see if IPM.
We approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So moved. All right. Moving on to the draft policy for the integrated pest management policy. I hope you guys have taken a look at this, but you can pull it up already. Clint may have something to add. I've told that so far the first two paragraphs are the ones that have been.
What I have,
Freaking pack.
you have a copy that was originally sent. I wrote,
I'm gonna
there's
take it
a
off the website.
version on that is 1.5, by the way.
Right.
I now have a version 1.6D that has gone through operations, went through administrative staff, and has gone out to the IPM task force. And I've gathered all that stuff back as another draft. So I'll hand that to you.
So that's not what we're seeing on our screen.
I think you're seeing the one that's the start IPM policy.
1.5.
Sunday, maybe?
It does, yeah. So this
Yeah.
I don't know what else I'm gonna do.
Incorporated some of the changes
Yeah.
that I was going to suggest, and that would be very helpful.
This is one I sent out to the committee yesterday.
Myself.
It was included on the stuff yesterday that I sent out.
My wife's gone to a soccer.
We could do one or two things. We could spend some time looking at it. You could go through it if you like and email me changes, modifications. What I normally do is I take them, see what else I got, and then try to write them into another draft. The next piece on this, I'm going to send it to two members of the task force, Jeff Lauer and Brandy Jansen. They're going to wordsmith it, bring it to the task force on the 18th? Yes,
Yes,
18th.
18.
2 weeks from tonight. And then that hopefully will be the draft that will then get to the
Sure.
board.
Okay.
Is it okay just to talk a couple
Oh,
suggestions
sure, of
here?
course, of course.
Just to save the extra email?
Sure.
And sometimes it might stimulate other people to...
Definitely, I just didn't want to push you to quickly read it when you had time to do it.
No, not at all. There were just very minor suggestions, and it looks like a lot of them have been from 1.5 to 1.6D seem to have been addressed already. In the third sentence of the first paragraph, that starts out, children spend a great deal of time in schools.
Mhm.
I was going to ask that we could say children and teachers to include our district staff who spend time in schools, just because while we are protecting children, we're also protecting our district staff.
So staff would be good instead of just teachers?
Right.
Yeah, and we certainly have had issues where teachers have had reactions to
Noxious
their
fumes.
allergens. I can remember some carpet fume moments that were,
Or stuff
Not
dripping
very
through the
good.
ceiling.
oh, yeah.
I had a suggestion in the first sentence of the second paragraph. And take it or leave it, or we can debate it. But it is the policy of the Iowa City Community School District to create a healthy environment. I was going to say preserve, but now you've changed it to create and maintain. So maybe that's better. Just create and maintain. I like that. I could take it or leave it. That was just something I had written down coming in here. I like that you fix in the last sentence of the second paragraph. Now we have a noun. Pests are living
Something, yes.
organisms. Perfect.
Everyone got that one.
There you go. I'm sure that
Yeah, so that's beautiful. First sentence of this, then there's the subheading integrated pest management, and the sentence starts out the district. I was going to say district should be capitalized in that use, but you did that already, so that's awesome. Use of sound IPM principles, comma, balancing, there was like a period or something weird in there before, but that's been fixed, that looks great. Sound IPM principles. Although I was gonna suggest that instead of a comma, I was thinking just the word. I'm not sure what the purpose of the sentence is. Is it supposed to be through the use of sound IPM principles by balancing scientific research with due consideration of precautionary principle? Or is it saying,
Yeah, I think that's intent.
okay, I was gonna say you could leave the comma, now the way it is, you could leave the comma in there, or you could strike the comma and put the word by. Either way, it's either one punctuation mark or 2 letters. I don't care. It gets the point
Let's
across.
see what Jeff and Brandy say.
Right. And then Jeff had, I don't know if he included you, Cliff, he had emailed a couple small suggestions. I suspect he's going to make these, so it might be kind of nice just to have them going to him.
Okay.
He, down under the heading objectives of, and sorry, stop me if I'm going on here.
No, I've got the same thing.
Okay. So under objectives of IPM include, and then there's the bullet points at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
The third one, ensure minimal or no exposure to humans, particularly children. And he suggested that before it says used to kill pests, organisms on district property, that it should say ensure minimal to no exposure to humans, particularly children, to any known or suspected toxic substances used to kill pest organisms on district property. That was his suggestion.
Or
Here, you know
Known
what?
or suspected
Or
toxic
suspected.
substances.
Here,
You gotta print out there.
I got to print out his email right here.
okay, good.
So you don't. So, he's got like 3 suggestions. So that was one.
Okay.
I'd be all for the known. I don't know necessarily if I personally agree with the suspected, but because to me, depending on your source, there's an awful lot of things that could be construed as suspected.
Right, but I think he's trying with that phrase, and we can come up with a better phrase, but he's trying to get at that precautionary principle. You don't have to wait until we're 100% certain.
Right.
You want to err on the side of caution.
And I guess the side that I'm coming from is that in the IPM discussions, we've had rather lengthy talk about even things like hand sanitizers. And, you know,
Some people suspect.
some people on the IPM committee suspect hand sanitizers have a toxic negative impact. The point that I've brought up is that, you know, in healthcare, that's the norm. And I would think that in, you know, that places like the Children's Hospital and so on and so forth, that if there was a known toxic impact, that
Yeah, there
that
ought
it
to be
would
some
be
phrase
utilized.
that we could get at that would be less than known, but, you know, reasonably suspected or,
And this is the fun of this committee, Cliff, is that we start throwing in little things like this.
Okay.
well, maybe just to have it in our heads as we go into the next draft and think something. I'm not sure we're going to solve that
Sure.
right now.
Jeff had a particular suggestion. I think it was to add a bullet point in accordance with child-centered, future-focused. IPM control methods will consider short-term toxicity and long-term health impacts. I think he has that in that email. Is that
Yes.
correct? And then the last thing had to do with the hours under the final.
Yeah,
Yeah, which has changed a little bit since I think he commented on it.
Okay.
yeah. There's a couple of issues revolving around that. One is, why did I insert internal only? And I had gotten from a couple that it's difficult to post external, not knowing what the weather conditions will be.
Right.
We're going to
Oh, I see.
chemically treat the lawn in 48 hours. And then the wind comes up and I can't treat it.
Right.
Now what?
Right.
Do I post again when I'm ready? And then all of a sudden it becomes, oh, they're posting again. They never treat it.
Absolutely.
So that's the piece. So I just kind of said, let's put it internally. But I don't know, and I got some members of the committee who have said, oh, well, we gotta look at something.
Well, yes. One of the things that we've had to stress with the committee is we have a diverse group of opinions, very diverse group of opinions. And we're going for, what's the word we're using? Is it consensus or is it,
We're not gonna.
we're not gonna get consensus. What was the word we were using? We were,
We don't vote, so it's not approval. We want to all feel good when we send that.
yes, 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 we want to make the sausage.
And, yeah, and Jeff's issues were, I mean, I'm reading it, post prompt location in the affected facility 48 hours prior to treatment and remain for 48 hours following. That would be okay, because he used the word in the facility.
Yeah.
He wants it to, his statement is to keep it there for another 48 hours.
Does he mean for 48 hours after the treatment?
48 hours before and
Okay, not 48 hours following the posting, 48
And-
hours following the treatment.
and will remain 48 hours following. You know, I'm thinking what commercial, you know, they post their sign saying 24 hours after. I mean, I don't see a problem with that, other than someone's got to monitor that to make sure that the sign isn't down before 48 hours.
I know that one member of the committee had suggested a number of rather strong descriptors to be inserted, and I'm actually, I think it's better to leave words like significant and.
Yeah, I tried to,
Yeah, I think, I think that that's probably good, and for a policy, for an editorial, yes, for a policy, no.
and then following this.
Just the facts.
Following this, I mean, the policy is kind of about why we're doing it. Following it, we'll have operating procedures that the staff will prepare as to how we're
Right.
gonna do it.
Right.
I had one additional thing I was going to mention. That sentence, because when we came out of the, I guess it was operations where we talked about this, we decided, well, we ought to have some sentence in there saying what the precautionary principle is. But that sentence that got added doesn't really, I mean, it says it's a strategy to cope with possible risks. It doesn't really tell us what that, it could be a little more descriptive. I mean, if it got at that point across, it's going to erring on the side of safety.
We took that as a definition of the precautionary policy principle website.
All
And
right.
we kind of figured this is what they believe it is.
Uh,
When in doubt, err on the side of caution.
I wonder if maybe an additional sentence or, well, that's worth thinking about, because I understand, I mean, it's an accurate sentence, but I don't know if it goes quite as far as
As
to
far
tell
as
us,
to
well, what sort of
the-
strategy is it? You know, the thrust of it being sort of to play to err on the side of caution. That's what, otherwise,
Did I nitpick too much?
no, I'm glad I was going to go through those things with Greg also, with Jeff also.
Just one clarification, if I could. No, I think I'm okay. I'm back in that one, ensure minimal or no exposure to humans, particularly children. Would you want and staff there? Or really, we're really trying to address children at that point, because staff are humans.
For under the bullet points?
Yes.
And I think it's, well, to humans, particularly children.
We're
So,
really
yeah.
driving down to that for protection to them.
But it is inclusive of staff, teachers, and visitors.
Yeah,
But particularly children.
children. I'm
So I
okay.
like the way it's worded.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's okay. I think the idea is that there's more susceptibility.
I'm gonna wait till probably Thursday this week, maybe Friday, and then revise this, send it to Jeff and Randy, ask them to look at it, then we'll bring it back to the committee. The committee will also, just for your information, we have Mark Schauer from Iowa State has done a visit to the buildings, and he'll make a presentation to the committee on that day also. So those are our two agendas.
Is that on the 4th? No.
No.
The 11th? No. 18th.
18th.
18th. I'll get there sooner or later.
2 weeks from tonight. no,
Mark's,
last night.
Mark's visit here previously, in I think December or so, was excellent.
He's well received.
He's excellent. And again, with a diverse group of opinions, Mark has done a wonderful job of taking opinions from opposite ends of the spectrum and applying a bit of logic and now wait a minute.
Common sense.
Common sense, yes. Now hold on, you can't say that approach to widely varied opinions, which has been very helpful. He's
He's well known in the field.
Mark is the guy who was here for the
Yes.
operation.
Yeah, if he's over the operations, yeah.
Yeah.
That happened to be during his visit. We're having a professor, I believe he's a professor,
Kamiar.
in Shannon,
Yep.
come down on the 20th to do an external visit. And he'll go travel with Ben and Dave and Jeff Barnes around the district to look at the external pieces.
So, you want us to look at salute? So you want us to look at this again in a month?
I would prefer that that you look at it, I want to run it by you, that we look at it at the board. I'd like to present it to the board in the end of April.
the last week of April.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's like the 26th.
So it's not coming back to us.
So maybe we can take 1.6B and peruse just a tiny bit closer and maybe make any extra suggestions.
And the board can always send
But
it
it
back to committee.
It would be nice to have some type of recommendation from this committee.
Yes. Considering how much time and effort's been put into this particular
All right.
item, issue.
I'd be okay with just seeing whatever version is coming to the board
Before the
beforehand. I
26th.
was open for commentary, I guess, and there's three of us. Could we?
Well, what I could do, we could get it to you that evening, the 18th.
All right.
You needed it by the 20th in the morning,
Yeah.
so we have a day to look at it if you like,
Sure.
before we go for the board agenda documents.
Well, I mean, worst thing would happen would be it would come before the board, and other people would have questions, and it ended up getting sent back to us rather
Yeah.
than you, so. It would be 2 more weeks, but.
Yeah, I do think it would be nice for us in some way, shape, or form to see it before it goes back to the board.
I'll make sure I give it to you on the 18th, after that meeting.
I mean, I'll be at the meeting, but these two probably won't be unless they're looking for extracurricular activities. Not yet.
Okay, we good to go on this? All right, thank you, sir. Moving on to conflict of interest discussion. Mr. Holland has sent us, or Steve and Joe have sent us some attachments to an email. Honestly, Steve, that item did not arrive in my mailbox until yesterday. So I don't know why. I mean, I saw the date was Friday, but then again, you know, what can I say about what I don't like about Outlook? Which, okay. And then I thought at that point, I mean, since, you were sort of asking for some input at that point, I thought, I mean, basically I just said, oh, well, whatever, just get to it, discussion. So, Joe, do you wish to speak to the items that you sent to us? Or?
I think I hope they're fairly self-explanatory
Yeah.
in terms of what the memo was about the post on the coastal listserv and the feedback. So I guess I'm here to try and answer any questions or participate in the discussion, but I'm not sure what exact direction the committee's looking for.
Well, I just had, and I don't know if these, if I can find the questions that I sent, there they are.
Did you send questions?
I did. But I didn't send them back, I just sent them to,
Oh.
asked to be, I mean, it's basically, I was sitting in a conference and really not thinking about the eyeballs I was supposed
You
to
want
be.
to admit that? Or is that-
I do. It was the third day of the conference.
Okay.
So I had four main questions. The first one was, is it within the norm to have district employees or administrators engaging in outside consulting?
I'm not sure what norm means. I think from what I was able to ascertain, it's common, prevalent.
Sure.
For employees at a whole variety of levels to engage in outside services. And I think that some of the feedback was to the effect that it's part of the learning experience and bringing things back to the district, not just a financial or advancement issue for the employees. So I don't know, without doing some sort of statistical survey, I don't know if you could say 90% of districts allow or 10%. It's a common practice.
Let me rephrase it. It's not irregular.
No.
Okay.
And I think it came across both in some information Steve got from the UEN and from what I received. It's a common practice.
Second question, is it commonly acceptable to have permissions, guidelines, and limitations regarding consulting specified in the employment contract?
But I don't know that I have an answer. I think if there are policies where it's specified in policies that if you have the ability to do consulting work, you have to abide by the policies that are in place. And there's one that, I think it's the Jackson, Mississippi one that was along, one of the responses on the listserv, which is, it's much along that line. If you want to do outside consulting work, here's the policy, here's the form you have to submit to get permission to do it. And I think that probably one of the benefits of that is it covers a broad class of employees, because you never know for sure when somebody's going to have an opportunity to do that.
Regarding so we've had this discussion here in committee how we have individuals in our district, district employees who serve as elected representatives for various municipalities. I don't necessarily, I mean, those situations as well as individuals that may be employed in or doing outside consulting work, there's always potential for conflict of interest.
That's correct.
And my question is, what would your guidance, I've always been of the mindset that if there's even the perception of potential conflict of interest, to remove oneself, to either, if in a, say, a voting situation, to abstain, if there's previously, I know that when there were consent agenda items, we had board members who were involved in various entities that were being named in the consent agenda, and they would remove the item and then abstain from the vote just to not create an appearance of conflict of interest. And I'm just curious, what guidance do you have for us, whether it's district employees, district representatives, administrators, board members, whatever, when it comes to potential conflict of interest? I mean, I've always been in the mindset, when in doubt, or if there's even the perception, you're best to err on the side of caution.
I think you have to start back at a basic level, as people have to understand what conflict of interest is, because I think depending upon the sophistication of the individual and the circumstances they're in, sometimes people don't perceive what they're doing as a conflict of interest. It can be pretty subtle. So I think having employees understand what a conflict of interest is. We talked at a prior meeting about a definition of conflict of interest, which is basically your duties to the district come first, your other duties are secondary, or your other opportunities are secondary. You need to recognize when that secondary opportunity may impair your loyalty to the district or affect it. So I think one is helping people understand what a conflict of interest is, because if they can't do anything if they don't know what it is. Some are pretty obvious, but some are pretty subtle. It's hard to draw a really good line. I understand what you're saying about in the rules of professional conduct for lawyers, it's called the appearance of impropriety, which is really what you're talking about. Something they do something improper by acting in a manner where they may have that conflict of interest. That relates to disclosing what that conflict of interest is, because there are times when once it's disclosed, that appearance of impropriety goes away. You disclose a potential conflict of interest, and it may or may not be an actual conflict of interest. And that's up to the individual, I think, to make a judgment. One concern is you take people out of the action sometimes if they have a perceived conflict of interest, which isn't a real conflict of interest. And part of that is who is perceiving that as a conflict of interest. We were listening to a discussion about your integrated pest management and how you have a committee that has widely divergent views. You can have widely divergent views when it's a conflict of interest. And so there needs to be some understanding, comes back to the education. What is a real conflict of interest versus what is somebody's perception? In general, I agree. You err on the side of caution. If it doesn't smell right, then your gut tells you shouldn't be acting on this because it sends a wrong impression to the public, or because it is a conflict of interest, you step aside. I'm not sure what the rest of the question was.
No, that's kind of what I was getting at. I don't know. Those were just the only questions that I can come up with. I don't know if they're on or off the mark, and I don't know what the other members of the committee might.
No, I think they're on. But the more I think about this, the broader the scope gets. Thinking about other past things too, say the administrator, or it has been a teacher, for example, that served on board of a private school in the area. What are the parameters there, and what conflict of interest are there? Well, if the board, for example, at Regina, I was city teacher on it, and it's necessary for Regina to contract with the district to get a busing situation straightened out. We all know how expensive busing is. Again, is that an issue thing? And what defines the parameter? How do we go about, this is the bottom line is going to be, how do we go about defining the parameters of what we're going to be doing here? I mean, it could be case by case. But it would be nice to have something in place that just said, look, let's not go here. I don't want to fault anybody for being on the board at Regina. As I was talking about, I think I've been board for over 10 years. I hope he did a fine job. But these days we call into question some things. So there's that. I offered a couple of questions to my colleagues here, specific to, say, a job, not even an administrator, right? I offered a hypothetical. Let's say we have an electrician who lives in Wellman. He's a district electrician. He's asked to perform a repair at Mid-Prairie for pay. Does he do it if it's on the weekend, or does he become the electrician on call, so to speak, for Mid-Prairie on nights and weekends? Because they know he knows, how a school operates. On the one hand, I don't want to stop the guy from making some extra money. On the other hand, what? It seems to me he's bringing his expertise as an electrician in a school building to Mid-Prairie, not necessarily bringing that skill set back. Not that it would bother his ability to be an electrician, but this just gets bigger, and I am more worried about our publicly elected employees than I was before. Thanks to you.
Sorry.
It's not a problem. No, it is a problem, and it may not be a problem, but I'm
Anything I've
more
done in
concerned.
particular to make, other than just bring it up?
That's just bringing it up, and it's a realm of quality, I think I could say to that, so.
But I think
part of the problem is it's hard to have a one-size-fits-all. Administrators have essentially a 24/7 job. You'll see probably emails or texts from your administrators at 10 o'clock at night. An electrician has specified work hours. And if the electrician's not using the district's tools, it's not on the district clock, I don't think it's the same issue with the electrician doing something locally, having a little side job, or unless they're so busy that they're tired at work, that whatever they're doing out there is really taking away from their ability to fulfill their functions.
And that's back to what you were saying about their secondary opportunity interfering with their primary opportunity.
Right, and it's not an easy thing to deal with everybody from custodian, teachers, a teacher, bus driver, even not a driver, food service driver.
Right.
You have a lot of office staff, secretaries, and then you have all the way up to the top of that pyramid. It's hard to have that one-size-fits-all that works for everyone.
Right, I mean, we by the same token, we talk about food service driver, us, and we fix up a chopper, driving for Martin Brothers on the weekend or something. Martin Brothers work, we buy, most of our stuff from them, so.
Well, maybe that one's different. Most of the things you're describing don't bother me the least. You can imagine the Regina board member recruiting students to Regina. Costs us, what, $1,600 every time they do, or $6,000?
66.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything wrong with any of that. My focus would be much narrower, because I do think it's just going to be impossible at some point to pin down what we're trying to get at. I would start with the smaller project. I think I said it before, but what I'd be focusing on is people who are necessarily going to be, more high-level administrators in a position to recommend contracts with outside entities that we would have to act on, or possibly even just, sign it, I guess, without us. Also, sort of on the outside, working or employed by potentially those very same companies. Seems like that would be the low-hanging fruit that we could, deal with first, and then maybe go from there.
You know where I've seen that the most?
What's that?
I think I may have said it when where I've seen that the most is with coaches.
So what's the example?
Well, a coach who is a football coach who works for an athletic apparel or equipment company and wears their school their knit shirt with a school logo on it when they're out there trying to sell the product, and they try and sell product to the school district. I mean, and I've seen this happen more than once. Or the coach wants to have a clinic and uses the school facilities and doesn't bother to figure out they need to pay rent. And is it really, they're doing it to put money in their pocket, how appropriate is that? Or I've seen weight training coaches be paid for work hours with students.
Tennis lessons on the tennis courts, but they're not.
Yeah, it's
At least that's a little bit different though, because you're not selling stuff to us. Or maybe they are.
well, they may also be selecting vendors or steering vendors that to bid on school purchases. it may be a two-tiered approach, I think, because I think there needs to be a general conflict of interest, a policy that applies to everybody from ground up. And then maybe at a higher level where people have the more opportunities to influence purchasing decisions, where there may be more economic conflict, to have a more specific policy. But I think that there needs to be just a general policy. You don't engage in outside activities that create a conflict of interest with your employment with the district. And
Boy, that's gonna be so hard to find.
I would just,
I realize that.
I would.
That's nothing other than really a restatement of the law, which is out there already.
Yeah, I don't know if I would say you don't engage in, I would say you must disclose that you are engaging in outside conflict, outside employment opportunities.
Well, you know, if a person takes on 2 and 3 extra jobs and therefore gets no sleep and comes to work in the morning here, completely unable to do their job, I guess that's a conflict of interest.
Do you have anything?
But that's, you can just address in terms of, well, you're not doing your job.
Do you have anything in the College of Law that you have to sign?
Well,
'Cause I know you have
don't,
something.
But I don't do
Annually.
scholarship and
Okay.
scholarship faculty. There might be something that applies. You know, College of Law is mostly not institution funded, so there's not as much of that. But there might be something that still applies.
So I know mine, annually I have to sign says, I certify that I have not engaged in outside employment activities in my area of expertise greater than X number of days per year. If so, I must disclose da-da-da-da-da-da. And the way that's a positive to have is, first off, and in orthopedics especially for some reason, which is not my area, but in orthopedics there seems to be a number of people that like to bend that pretty hard. And when they've been caught, they've said, you did not disclose this. And that's a serious problem. If you've signed this form annually and not disclosed that you have an outside interest on some surgical, device or whatever. And so there's been a hard crackdown on items such as devices that you may hold patents, as far as outside engagement and speaker activities, and it all has to be disclosed. And I just know that annually for nearly 16 years I've had to sign a form that says, for me it's like greater than 9 days. I have not engaged in outside involvement greater than 9 days, blah, 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 if so, which almost seems just more tedium, but also it makes people say, geez, my job depends on this.
Yeah.
Geez, I know when it comes to me signing that thing annually, I think, did I do anything that could be construed as greater than 9 days?
It strikes me as a fairly blunt tool, though, to measure it by quantity of days versus.
And that's just an example. That's just a strange example.
The state code takes a position on, it has a monetary cap on the amount of
Right.
business a board member or a board member related party can do with the district.
Right.
So that's a blunt tool too, but it's a very low ceiling, a very clear cap. It's possible to get into conflicts of interest with very minimal amount of time. You could take a day and generate a huge conflict of interest. And you could take a month and not generate any, except you're not there to do your job.
Right.
Although, it's also possible you could take some amount of time, generate a ton of money, and it wouldn't bother me at all. If the teacher writes a novel, publishes the book, makes a mint, what do I care? It's
Doesn't
not
interfere.
interfering
I
with
only
their job.
care, at the point I would care would be if the teacher was insisting to the curriculum director that we buy the book.
Right.
I like, this is SOP in college, we're gonna,
Right.
It is.
I've written the biology book, my God, we're gonna use it.
Yeah.
Does not work
We
for
do have
us.
a rule about that at the law school. Can't keep money.
Oh.
But there are people who obviously aren't making their house payments off their salaries as teachers these days, but they are certainly covering, and textbooks don't generate a lot of individual income for the writer as a result.
Prestige.
Yeah, so, but they get their payback one way or another, but anyway. And disclosure does not necessarily mean approval.
That's correct. They're two separate issues. One, disclosing your conflict of interest in some circumstances, the district can waive a conflict of interest because it received benefit to the district.
Okay.
But disclosure does not imply consent in any manner.
So, along with a policy which defines conflict of interest for us, going with the Jackson, Mississippi one, I did look through, I took a look at that, the business of using a form prior approval for consent.
That's the concept. I guess one of the challenges there is, depending on how broad you want to make that, do people have the ability to identify a conflict of interest? This says not be engaged in any business in conflict with the interests of the district. Well, hopefully people, particularly at a higher level, understand what that means. And I'm not sure you can say at what level of employment there's the most opportunity for that to happen, to be in conflict with the employment of the district. I know a lot of it's focused at the higher administrative level and consulting work. And certainly that can be disclosed, and there can be specific time limits on there. There can be specific monetary caps. There can be a number of ways to regulate that. I have a little bit of, I part ways a little bit with the idea of having to submit a form every time you do consulting work. I think that's for particularly people at a higher level and professionals. It's a little questionable. Every time they want to do something, should they have to sign a form giving permission? I would opt more for some kind of limit, which is either imposed on everybody by policy or imposed at a contractual level. I also think the administrative process, do you really need another administrative process where every time somebody wants to do consulting work, they have to add another piece of paper to the data bank?
No, but we spent a lot of time generating paper, real or electronic.
That's why I said data bank. It's going to say pile of paper. But and I think there's the conflict of interest and outside employment in some sense are two different issues. Because there can certainly be outside employment where there is no conflict of interest. I think your example of the electrician is probably an example where there is no conflict of interest.
Right.
On the other hand, there are times when certainly outside employment could be the coach marketing sporting goods. And there again, that may be as much the appearance of impropriety as the actual conflict of interest.
Well, we would like to avoid the appearance of impropriety.
To an extent. I mean, at some point, it's either impropriety or it's not impropriety.
Yeah.
And if it's not impropriety, people should be free to do the thing, even though somebody might say it appears improper.
You also have to, I think, to the higher level employees have a certain level of trust that you're hiring people who are going to recognize that and they're going to live by the rules that are set. If you have a conflict of interest policy and part of their obligation as employees to follow that, if you try and shepherd everybody around and keep an eye on them, I think it's problematic in a number of ways.
I don't know what the guidance
Where to
is.
go?
Yeah, where to go with this.
Well, I think it depends. If you want to do something in terms of a policy, one is to try and define what a conflict of interest is.
Within the code.
Well, I think broader than that. If you have a conflicting interest economic or otherwise, with your employment at the Isaac Community School District, you have at least a potential conflict. And then you drill down to identifying whether it's a real conflict. And if you think you have a conflict, where do you go? Who do you go talk to and say, who do you disclose that to? So I think I might have a conflict. Can I go ahead and do this or not? Who is that person or body that adjudicates whether there's a conflict of interest? And I would assume the first stage in that process would be, say if it's a teacher, it's your supervisor. If it's an electrician, they go to the head of the physical plant and ask them. And if they don't like that answer, do they have someplace higher up in the process to go? And remind people of the statutory limits. I think that's a good example. State law recognizes a conflict of interest, and this may or may not apply to you, but here it is.
So really, it's where do you go and who do you appeal to if they, because at the building level, you would think that somebody in a building would go to the principal of the building.
Or you can think that somebody would go to HR. That'd be an option.
I would probably opt for HR, because I don't know if you're building principals, or you run the risk of getting, you've got, what, 20-some, 30-some building principals out
Different
there.
judgments, yeah.
Are they all going to have the same view of what a conflict of interest is? I think you need a little bit of uniformity, probably the HR people, Jim and whoever his successor is, and people in that department. But they have to have an understanding of what a conflict of interest is, and they have to have some authority to be able to say yes or no. I also think one of the challenges is to identify how big a problem is you're trying to deal with. How often does it come up? How big of a problem has it been? I know there's been friction for a long time between the superintendent and the board over outside consulting work. I mean, that's no secret. Is it a problem that has occurred farther down in that pyramid of employees? There's always the opportunity to for a problem to appear bigger than it is and have a remedy that is out of proportion to the problem. So I think that's part of it. I think what problems has a district had with conflicts of interest that you need to either remedy or prevent occurring in the future?
Well, and just because you bring it up, when it comes to, say, the superintendent, whoever that may be, as long as the employment contract states that there are days that can be utilized for outside consulting or lecturing or engaging in outside activities, as long as it's within the contract, I don't have a problem with that. In fact, I think that people who are in professional roles, I think individuals who are asked to take part in those opportunities are considered experts in their field, and I think it's beneficial. Actually, my opinion is it's beneficial to the district to have, whether district employees or administrators, giving the CE rather than be on the receiving of the CE.
I think a number of days really it doesn't really have to do with conflict of interest, other than saying you got to devote X number of days to the district, and beyond that it's conflict of interest.
Exactly.
You still have what that activity is, and does the activity per se generate conflict of interest? There's plenty of outside employment where there's no real conflict of interest. You may want to limit the number of days so that the district gets the services they're expecting out of the administrator. Now, there can be activities, like I said, that's that one day, so you can go out one day and it can be a huge conflict of interest.
Okay.
So I'm not sure, a time limit on the number of days addresses the issue in one way, strictly in terms of you're committed to working for this district for X number of days, and you have to be there for that period of time. And that's pretty common in the contracts in that whole entire pyramid of employees.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at, Joe, is the real versus perceived. Is that there's been rather, there's been implications made by people who don't understand our employment contract, saying that there's conflict of interest, and there is, and there's not. It's not even breach of contract. It's in accordance with the contract. So.
Well, and I share your opinion about, I think, the value of administrators and other people, including teachers and who knows, maybe even people at the physical plant, going out and educating other people, because I've done some of that. My experience is getting ready to do that and being there and preparing for it. You learn more than you do sitting back in an audience where some speaker may be droning on and you're reading the newspaper instead of really paying attention.
Or maybe I'm answering emails from the school district.
So I think that, I think there probably is a real value to employees being able to participate in those sorts of things. And if you want to choose to limit the number of days, I think that ensures that you're getting value out of their services in terms of a quantity. The conflict of interest is really a separate issue, whether in 1 day or 30 days are they engaging in activities that pits their economic or other opportunities against the interests of the district. And I know that's the allegation that was made, or the insinuation that was made with the Soups Academy. Was that something where the economic opportunity for the superintendent was in conflict with duties to the Iowa City School District? So, this is,
Right, no, I mean, I'm not objecting to people going out and doing some teaching in CLEs or CLEs too. That's the legal one. Continuing ed things. But it does seem different if you're, in doing that, you're working for somebody who then is going to come and, want to contract with us. And again, it might be an appearance thing, but it's different. And at some point, I'm worried that this is asking for trouble. But again, I'm kind of with you on what you were saying earlier about, are we going to have some huge solution to something that isn't necessarily. I mean, maybe there are small conflicts of the type you were describing with coaches, for example, but you haven't addressed it in the past, and if you don't address it now, I'm not sure it's going to be the end of the world.
just for clarification, that doesn't really get any coaches with the Iowa City School District.
No, I just mean it's theoretical.
Make that clear. That's
Theoretical,
in other districts.
So I would be more focused on something narrowly tailored to that particular concern at a higher level, And we may, maybe the board doesn't want to do it.
And I think certainly if any employee is working for a vendor that the district may contract with, they need to disclose that. And if there is that potential conflict, they need to step aside. And lots of things are handled through a competitive bidding process or responses to RFPs, where the board's the ultimate decision maker, and that can wash out a lot of that conflict. But that certainly potential is still there.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we have now under the contract is problematic, because if I remember correctly, I don't have it in front of me, sometimes the superintendent can be working for somebody that only the board chairman knows.
Yeah.
And so we could be voting on something without realizing. And so at the very least, something has to change with disclosure, or with who ends up approving the item by, under the contract. So it seems to me there's a problem. I don't know how big the solution has to be, but I want to fix it to some extent.
I think, the way to deal with any problem is first identify what the problem is, so you find an appropriate solution, and you do just enough to address the problem and not more, which just complicates people's lives.
The idea of running a policy that's going to apply to every teacher in the district about working outside, that's not what I was going to work.
before. I know it's not crazy, but it's not what I was in the market.
And as I've said before, the thing for teachers is taken care of elsewhere. I can't remember whether it's in code, I couldn't find it in the contract, but basically, you're not gonna. Anyway, it generally doesn't happen. I mean, it's not that teachers don't get hired off contract time. The difference between a teacher and administrators is that length of contract. I mean, teachers have the continuation of contract during when they're off contract time, but it doesn't prohibit them from going to teach summer school for somebody else.
And it shouldn't be.
It's a set number of days.
I think the only place I really seen that come up much is with tutoring, or giving private lessons
Right.
to students, and
Mhm.
that can be an issue if
Which,
you're.
I mean, my kids have taken music lessons from orchestra teachers in the district.
Yeah, but maybe not ones at the same school. But
No,
maybe,
maybe.
or maybe.
And that doesn't necessarily make it a
I don't see
conflict
what's
of
in there.
interest, but
Yeah.
if a teacher is teaching reading and tutoring a student in that class after school in reading, maybe it's a conflict, maybe it isn't.
Yeah, that's not allowed to be taken on.
And again, does that happen often enough that it's worth pushing a policy out there to deal with? Probably not.
Probably not. Yeah, you're right, it's not what we're talking about, really.
Well, and just to add one more layer on it there, I want to circle back to see how does this particular topic relate to our 3 defined board goals? When Chris is maybe the board doesn't want to take this on, I mean, if our board goals are increasing reading, math, and closing the achievement gap, how does this contribute to that?
You could ask that question about the portion of our agenda.
Dude, we can ask that question about almost anything. You want to be truly reductive. I'm only laughing because yeah, there's a bottom line there, but we could probably dispense with some committees. I mean,
We could.
we could suspend some meetings.
We could.
Just say, look, this is what we're talking about anymore. I'm not approving anything.
And the reason I thought it was because Chris says, well, I don't know if the board wants to take that up, but
Well,
I'm thinking,
I mean,
is there a more valuable way to
you know,
use
we-
board time
Lord.
than hammering out a draconian thou shalt, whatever, for every district employee, teacher, staff member, whatever?
No, but it's not where we're going here.
Sounds good.
I guess I was thinking last time we talked about this in the meeting, we were gonna send it back to the board for a little more discussion than we ended up sending it back for.
Yeah.
To see if the board was really on board for us to continue working on this, because if they're not, then it's not there, So we could do that, we could have, I think what happened was the last time we sent it, it was just in the form of reporting out from the committee, a committee update or something, discussion about it. But we could have, a discussion about it at the board level and see if anybody's interested in doing anything even resembling what we're talking about, or some variation on it, or some minor aspect of it, and then, if they are, we can come back and do it.
Okay.
And if not, we can,
I think that's a
hang
good
out.
step forward, or at least step in a circle.
You'd have to give them a little update on where we are, just what we talked about.
I think they need to understand the complexities of it and the potential scope versus what are you really trying to accomplish and you really want to take on. A big task or a very narrow defined task, and what do they want folks to do?
Yeah.
Want to try that?
Sure.
I think that collectively if the board says, oh, we do want this giant policy that.
Oh, then we're in trouble.
Then we got some heavy lifting to do, guys, but before we do the heavy lifting, it might be nice to know what, I think that's a
We're
valuable.
not gonna ask them for time frame, we'll impose your time frame.
We can maybe put the time frame after the new committee. It's named in September. Guess none of the 3 of us would be.
Okay.
Rock and roll.
All right.
Any other questions or anything else we can
Thank
talk
you.
about tonight that'd be helpful?
Well, all right, I'll throw it out just because we were thinking about it. I'm not sure it's close enough related. And I wish I apologize for not responding to that message. I was sort of keeping my eye on the agenda, but didn't realize that was coming through the email. But we wondered a little bit about
I'm not, again, if it's too far afield, you can just shut me down. The role of the board chair in the way these things are contractually approved seems to give the board chair kind of a special role. And we're wondering if we can even do that if we want to. In terms of a Dillon's rule type of
You
argument.
mean in terms of the board chair
Yeah, can we
having
delegate things
the
to the board
approval
chair?
of leave requests and so
Yeah.
forth?
Now, bringing that on you with no time for you to think about it.
Well, that comes back to that question about who's the decision maker. I don't think Dillon's rule is probably a problem in terms of the board chair looking at the facts and saying this fits within or doesn't fit within what the board as a whole or the district as a whole has made a determination is appropriate. It's basically somebody who's looking at the facts and saying, how does this apply with our policies? It's a little bit more than ministerial, but it's not, I think, usurping the scope of power of the board. I think it's been delegated, just like you delegate a lot of other things to both board members and staff. I think that's a delegable function. So as a practical matter, to convene the board every time a request comes up can be a challenge.
All right. That's all. That's all I have to think of.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Joe.
You're
Thanks.
welcome. I hope it was helpful.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Just Sam's trying to get a hold of a glass full of water when you start talking about these things.
Superintendent direction.
So where do we begin with superintendent direction? Thank you, Joe, by the way.
Thank you. And I think we can actually make this brief because, what's that? F and G, which were kind of my assigned area, but I accidentally did your assigned area at the last meeting, so now I finally did my assigned area. Well, that's okay, because I'll tell you, under F, those board policies that are linked in F are about as accurate as you can get for F. I had one suggestion to add admin guideline 400, if you want to look up admin guideline 400. I can tell you it's, I got it, Kim, it's coming. Admin guideline. It is, there's a lot of crossing between the admin guidelines and the board policies, but 400 is personnel policies, goals and guiding principles. District's goal is to obtain and retain qualified and effective. It's basically saying what already all the listed links were. I was going to say, can we link to the admin guideline as well as the board policies?
That's fine.
That was the only suggestion I had for 2F.
Yeah, I mean, 2F's pretty straightforward.
Ta-da.
Okay.
Okay.
And I always just assume that these cross-references to the board policies and admin policies, it's all kind of, I think, anyways, I don't see that as a limitation on the
No,
policies
no.
that are in play.
Numbers matched up.
No, but that was kind of us breaking
We
it
wanna
down.
make
Was
sure it
we
matches.
realized that some of the policies, some of the linkages, or I'm sorry, some of the cross-referencing didn't match up
No,
anymore.
that's the problem.
So that's all I was trying to do, was just say, I mean, I don't have any problems with what's in 2F and what's in 2G. I had no real suggestions to make significant changes. It's more cross-referencing. And I can, since I just did it last night, I suppose I can type these up. Anyone have any other issues with 2F? Okay. Because admin guideline 400 is pretty much in line with board policies that are listed there. So 2G, the board policies listed in 2G did not seem accurate with anything within 2G. So that has the same board policies that are in 2F did not, I was unsure how board policies about equal employment
licensed employees and classified employees had anything to do with communication with and support to the board.
Good point.
So
Yes, that's a good point.
I suggested that perhaps we strike those links, cross-references, and that we use, that we use admin guidelines. Kim, are you ready for this? 203, 208, and 209, which 203 is powers and duties of board members, which describes that board members have to know legislative, have to have a legislative, executive, and evaluative duty, and it's really about executive duty, about board delegates to the superintendent its authority to carry out board policy, to formulate and carry out rules and regulations, and handle the administrative details in a manner which supports and is consistent with board policy. Since we look through this and the board, it says that under category 3, that the superintendent is supposed to tell the board when they're out of line with their own policies. I kind of figured that that fell under admin guideline 203. 208 is board policy development. It was just, again, about board policies. And I know, Steve, you're just loving this, right? And 209, development of regulations. The board of directors delegates to the superintendent the function of formulating regulations designed to carry out policies of the board. I felt like those links were strong correlation with what 2G is about. There was also links in the board superintendent linkage. This thing, board superintendent linkage, because a lot of this is about how the superintendent deals with the board. I was going to say 2B, or not 2B, 2C, 2D, 2E, and 2F, board superintendent linkages.
I'm not writing that stuff down, that's my way out.
I got it.
But they seem to be very much in line with the 7 subheadings of superintendent shall, level 3G, that is in this particular. Last but not least, Kim. You follow me?
Vaguely.
Okay.
Well, keep going.
Okay.
I'll look at it later.
I can tell you what 2B through FR if you're interested. It's easy. Board of directors will respect and support the superintendent's reasonable interpretation of existing policies. The board of directors does, of course, retain the responsibility, option, and power to modify or add to these policies. 2C is the superintendent is authorized to use any reasonable interpretation of the board's ends and superintendent directions, policies to establish all further administrative policies, make all decisions, take all actions, establish all practices, and develop all activities. 2D, only decisions of the board of directors acting as a body are binding upon the superintendent. Decisions or instructions of individual board members, officers, or committees are not binding on the superintendent unless the board of directors has specific blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Okay,
You're just reading from the thing that you want to list as a cross-reference.
that's it.
For which item?
For communication with and support to the board, level 2G. We're just cross-referencing the current board superintendent linkages that are applicable. That's all. Not 2A, but anyhow. So the last thing, Kim, the last thing is that the superintendent shall, level 3G, that is under what we're looking at, 2G. Number 1, whole paragraph is there, blah, 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 about ends, et cetera, and it says see Appendix 3. I was going to propose that Appendix 3 be hyperlinked. As nitpicky as that is.
No, not at all.
And I also thought that Appendix 4, I think, was applicable as well, which I thought I had that squared away. Appendix 4 is coming up. Yes, because it talks about academic ends policies data reports. Because the paragraph there, numbered 1, talks about MIS, Management Information Reporting System, keep informed of district operations generally, blah, blah, blah. That Appendix 4 would also be something that might be good to be hyperlinked there.
Okay.
So, if it's just cross-referencing, that's all. And it's nerdy, and it's tedious, but words matter. And apparently I had too much time on my hands,
It's good.
so. Do you want me to write those out, or you got it all?
I took notes, so I think we're good.
Oh, one more. I hear Tom cringing. Under number 3, about the superintendent inform the board whenever in his or her judgment the board is not in compliance with its own policies, blah, 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 blah. The links I had there, not only were superintendent linkage 2B and 2D, which I had already mentioned, but also board governance 2A. Yay. Board governance 2A is defines how the board will govern with an emphasis on organizational vision, encouragement of diversity and viewpoint, strategic leadership, more than administrative detail, clear distinction of board and superintendent roles, blah, 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 blah. And that, I swear to God, is all that I have.
Okey-dokey.
I don't believe him.
I got one.
I'm impressed that you actually keep this stuff. Because, well, not because, but you're a policy wonk, so as you say, so that's fine with me.
That is a self-described policy.
It
wonk.
is,
For
I
the
know
record.
you are, that's why I use that phrase. I'm not unhappy with that aspect of your
Character.
duty.
So, not to,
That's your character. Who's duty here? That's just.
when we do, after we just do F and G, are we done? Or is there one more piece that has to get done as part of the site?
K was part of it, but K has like nothing to it. K is that the board or the superintendent shall seek annual professional development opportunities that are well focused and appropriately related to district goals or specifically designed to improve his or her professional skills.
oh, there, it is very small.
Other than that, I was going to say that all the striking and highlighting that you have included in this, I thought was completely reflective of what we discussed at our last meeting.
Okay.
So, yeah, I don't have any other suggestions for F and G, and the only thing that's always hard is to think if there's something that ought to be there that's not there, but I couldn't think of anything.
I got nothing else. Breathe a sigh of relief, Kim.
Pretty minor.
Pretty minor. I can hyperlink that, I can add that.
Okay.
I can strike that. But as far as the actual reviewing the, reviewing the, whatever it is that we're reviewing, the superintendent directions, I had no suggestions there.
Well-
Or cross-linking.
I don't know if I should,
Uh-oh.
I took a shot at revising the very first 2 paragraphs of the document.
Oh.
Which one?
Literally the introductory paragraph.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if that's part of what we're reviewing or not.
I thought we, okay, go ahead.
Well, I don't know, like I say, if it's more trouble, that's where we leave it alone. I'll read you what I wrote. Because the first paragraph there, it just seemed to be kind of all over the place. I wrote, the district's end policies identify the desired educational outcomes for the district.
Bingo.
It is the role of the superintendent to pursue these ends through any reasonable means within the constraints imposed by the board. These superintendent limitations express the constraints that the board imposes on the superintendent. And I was just going to leave it at that.
Yeah, they editorialize.
Yeah, they kind of.
Yeah.
However, we do believe that certain means may not be justified by the ends.
And there's an exclamation.
That's exclamation point. It's just
Not like we are doing it, but we're not doing it, we don't mean to do it, or something to do it. And if you want to take it off, just read you the next one too. So the global superintendent directions, global limitations, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, I know, okay. So the very next paragraph, basically, I just condensed it a little bit. Not that different, but the superintendent shall ensure that the district's practices and administrative guidelines comply with A, applicable law, B, its binding contracts, and C, commonly accepted standards of professional and business ethics. So I didn't change, I just condensed all that stuff into applicable law.
Is there any reason why we have to have relevant requirements of the U.S. or Iowa Constitution, laws, court decisions, administrative regulations, and requirements?
I think
Or can you just say applicable law?
That was the question.
I think that's,
I think that's great.
contrary to what I've just laid on you for cross-references, I am always a fan of less is more.
So I thought I'd toss those two out there. I don't know if you wanted more time to think about it or not.
Do you mind, thanks.
I mean, you.
Wow,
I only have one copy.
looks
In fact,
cleaner, too.
Don't look at this stuff towards the bottom, because I started going on further and I thought this is getting out of control and I don't want to suggest any of those things. Plus, I got into 2A. I was so confused by the levels.
Oh, yeah.
I'm still confused by the whole outline.
And
Yeah, so
you,
don't- I changed the whole outline.
I was just gonna say, and you've changed the outlining system,
If I were to
so.
do this from scratch, since I did this before the last meeting, actually, and didn't get around to it.
So for the level 1, the global superintendent directions, I think that is fine to
Okay.
take make it applicable law instead of applicable or relevant requirements of the U.S. But this does have administrative regulations
Well, that's
and
applicable
requirements.
laws. Administrations have the force of statutes, standard principle. So it is applicable law.
Okay. I don't have a problem with that. And this is significantly shorter in the first paragraph.
Yeah, but the first paragraph, I messed around with a lot more, so you might want to, really compare the two before you sign on to that.
Yeah.
Kim, don't worry, because if they like it, I'll just hand it to you.
Perfect.
I don't see any problem with it.
What was the, let me just read that first paragraph.
Should be answered here. Within the constraints imposed by the board.
Basically trying to just reduce it to the essence of Hartford governance, right? Do what you want within the constraints that we say. Do what you reasonably think is right within the constraints that we say.
Within these, not in the original, within these boundaries, the superintendent is free to take whatever steps seem advisable to reach district goals without further authorization from the board.
I forget whether mine sort of captures that or not.
Yours says the superintendent limitations express the constraints that the board imposes on the superintendent.
We'd have to change that word limitations because that is part of my overall. change.
Right, superintendent directions.
Directions.
I would keep it as directions and I would ask
We could still save that last sentence.
that we save that last sentence. And so it would be these superintendent directions express the constraints that the board imposes on the superintendent. That's from your verbiage. And then say, within these constraints, the superintendent is free to take whatever steps seem advisable to reach district goals without further authorization from the
Okay.
board.
I'll write it up for you and send it to
I appreciate that.
you. Let me make sure I have that.
Yep, just take that
So you're thinking that that would be
here.
the last sentence, right?
Just take the last,
The last sentence here will be the last sentence here.
right.
Okay, but we'll change the word.
No, it will be in addition to what you have right there.
Right, but it won't be in the middle of these sentences. It'll be
Right,
the
so
last
copy
sentence.
from there, paste,
Yes, take that, put it in here, and then
And the
you change
word
that word boundaries
constraints.
to constraints.
right? And change your word limitations to directions.
Right. Oh, no.
You're right. Here, this is what it looks like.
Oh, there it is, right.
Take the part of the circle.
Very good.
Slap that on there.
I'll just put that next sentence.
I just want to make sure that that he or she still has, they can take, they're free to take whatever steps seem advisable without further authorization, so they don't have to come to us. I like that it states you're running the district. You don't need to come to us every time you need to order a 24-pack of toilet paper. Please don't. Please.
All right, I should be able to get this to Kim very. So that was,
I think we talked about our next agenda, and check in with our friend Mr. Lauer after we're done with the meeting here to let him.
I was gonna ask if it was, should I wait or should I go? And I just got in from Des Moines, so I'm sorry. I don't think you're.
I'll just fill you in on what's going on afterwards.
Sounds good.
Cliff was here and we had a nice discussion and incorporated your email suggestions, and
Awesome.
you should be, yeah.
Sure.
So if you stick around for a minute, I'll give you a more detailed.
I don't know, where are you in the agenda? 10 minutes?
We're at the end.
All right. Okay, thanks, I'll wait. Thanks.
We're at the part where we adjourn.
I can't remember time.
Are we supposed to talk about pay to ride again? And if so, why?
We put it on the board
I
agenda?
mean, I saw that.
Yeah,
But do we have anything else to do with it?
I don't think so. I think it's just ready to come
Okay.
there. We think we captured, although I'm not positive, most of the conversation that took place the last time we talked about it.
Okay.
So we asked to bring it to the board just from a timing standpoint because we get ready to start putting information out to parents
Yeah.
before the end of the school year.
Yeah,
And we
it's
were worried we were
necessary.
gonna get too close to the end of the school year.
Okay.
I feel like there was something at the March 22 meeting that was going to be printed to P&G, so I'm just going through the minutes here.
There was.
Maybe it was A&E, maybe it was advocacy and engagement.
It might have been Andy and Ops.
I think you're right. I think I'm on too many committees.
well, we were gonna have a meeting with that tonight, so it'd be in the same place.
It would be, it's partitioned off. Right, we reformatted.
22.
Scanning here real quick. Tell you what. Did we think of it? Actually, no, it would have come, it was A&E. It's A&E.
Okay.
Yeah, one was Ops and one was Andy.
Yep. It's A&E.
Yeah.
It's not here. I still can't remember what it was, but it's
Right.
A&E, Carol.
What next, gentlemen?
Anything else on the agenda?
We serve at the will of the board. Should we develop something that in the next two meetings? I think it'd be interesting to see what they say about conflict of interest.
Sure. I mean, the discussion continues until we get some satisfaction. We can do it for the board, but other than that.
But on our timeline for the year, that puts us, we've done everything then. Because we rock.
That must be it. That plus the fact we split the two committees, so we're doing everything else too. Or three, whatever. We assume the correct position.
So do we have, I mean,
Getting stuff done.
so then what do we have then? Nothing?
I can't think of anything for our agenda next time.
Unless the board says conflict of interest.
Right.
So we don't, there's nothing that says we have to have a May meeting for P&G. We could leave it as a placeholder, but I'm sure the A&E people would greatly appreciate not coming just at the tail end of P&G.
I'm sure they would.
Interesting.
Speaking of, we have 1/3 of the A&E members.
Well, no, someday we can start to talk, begin the conversation like getting out of the Carver governance policy.
Oh my God.
System. Make Steve smile and I look at it, talk about an aspirational goal. Well, I think it's a silly phrase, I understand it, but you have a goal and you want to get to it, and aspiring to get to a goal seems
Inspiring
kind of
to make
like
a
saying,
cheeseburger.
Just not to have a cheeseburger, to be a cheeseburger.
That's right.
Yeah.
Inspired many things.
I don't know, maybe, you know, this is an agenda thing, but maybe, you know, since we're proven to be at least collectively, at least 2/3 of you are collectively capable of going through some stuff. I mean, if there's any other thing policy-wise that we need to take a look at, even off schedule, sometimes just because we do that. But I'm not suggesting it, I'm just offering it as, you know, you're wandering around
And
and policy and, you know, stuff, and you decide, hey, maybe we gotta think about this.
I would say that, you know, on a TBD basis, if something comes up, you know, for instance, the IPM policy we talked tonight, it's come up. You know,
Yeah.
this is something that's come up within the last year, and it's something the committee's worked hard on, and it ends up on our table here. I would say that if we find areas in existing policies that are, you know, again, off the time schedule, that the board says, I think protocol would be the board would say, hey, let's punt that to P&G.
Okay.
I think, personally, I think that us scouring through, trying to find things that we disagree with might be bad form, but not.
You two guys spend more time reading this stuff, obviously, than I do.
Hey.
Not that I'm accusing you of doing anything.
I just rewrote the bylaws for something, so, on Friday afternoon, so.
Can I back up 2 steps?
Sure.
Well, just as I'm writing this thing to Kim, so she knows what we decided on global limitations, level 1. There's one little thing I did, and we didn't talk about it. So the first sentence said, the superintendent shall ensure that practices, activities, decisions, and organizational circumstances comply with all these things. And I just changed it to the district's practices and administrative guidelines. Just to, you know, because there's a long list of some, to me, policies and practices covers everything. He's not in charge of policies, he's in charge of guidelines, right? Administrative guidelines. So can I reduce that to that?
I'm okay with that.
Okay. Then I will add that to my message.
Okay, so the plan is to keep regular P&G data as a placeholder, but not necessarily have anything ongoing as an agenda. And should we decide, or should the board decide to do that, we will have plenty of time in which to decide.
So, just with these superintendent directions, whatever it is, A, B, F, G, and K, or whatever the heck it is. So, once you make those changes, we're okay with that just going to the board for approval, right? Including
Yes.
Director Liebig's
Right.
first and second paragraph that he's
Which I'll send to you.
working on diligently over here. So I don't think it needs to come back to us to go, yep, that's what we said.
No, not that stuff, not anymore.
Not anymore, please. All right.
Anything else? Steve, you got anything?
Only that I was correct after we looked at it, and there was some filter turned on while I was cranking out maps over the weekend, because the numbers are a little bit more accurate now. So
So we should expect more
a
accurate.
new packet. I actually took the old packet down.
Should we adjourn before we talk that?
Probably.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second. Take your pick.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So done.
Now.
I'll just let you know that